with precision to the point of translunar injection was one of the objectives, and it did exactly that. The insertion altitude we were aiming for a 975 by 16 nautical mile insertion. We got 972 by 16. That's well within the noise of a system like this. And then the vehicle delivered us to the point of translunar injection. The quote that I heard was "dead on," but there was a word inserted between "dead on" that I won't share with you here in this setting. But that just shows the precision of the system. In terms of how much risk that it retires, certainly the ascent environment, all the separation events through booster separation, the service module fairing separation, the jettison of the launch abort system, ascent with the core stage and shutting down the 4 RS-25 engines properly, jettisoning the core stage, and then the interim cryo propulsion stage doing a perigee raise maneuver, followed by a translunar injection maneuver, while you've got the deployment of the Orion solar arrays going on in proximity to it, and positioning those in time, that all of these choreographed events happen such that you do it within the load-bearing capability of the system, and then getting Orion converted off of battery power to solar array power before the batteries expired. All those things were demonstrated successfully today. And then disposal of the interim cryo propulsion stage, responsibly disposing of the interim cryo propulsion stage, as Senator Nelson was alluding to earlier. Now we flew up through the low Earth orbit and micrometeorite orbital debris band. We had 40 collision avoidance cutouts today during our 2-hour window, and the team found the right time to go because of our ability to screen through all that. We are heading outbound through the Van Allen radiation belts. Those are high periods of concentrated radiation. We are flying outbound past the Earth's magnetic field into the deep space environment where it gets extremely cold. The spacecraft loves to fly tail to sun for thermal and power production, and we've demonstrated all of that. Now we've got a lot of in-space propulsive maneuvers ahead of us. We'll demonstrate the service module. We'll demonstrate deep space command and control using the deep space network, and then we've got to set up for the second part of our priority one objective on the way home, which is the direct reentry of our brand new spacecraft with a new heat shield design, and then recover it. So we bought down a lot of risk today, but we've got a lot of mission ahead of us. As I said at the outset, we are on day 1 of a 26-day mission. And I don't know, Howard, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add a couple more things. Mike, that was a great recap. Certainly going outbound, we're going to be testing both engines, our main engine, and of course our auxiliary set of engines as well. So that'll be very important as we do all these correction maneuvers and the big burns. And of course the thermal environment that we're going to see in deep space is going to be always going to be a challenge, and we're going to correlate our models and get the data that we need from all our sensors. And certainly when we come back and do a reentry, our parachutes, we've done a lot of testing on the parachutes, 27 qualification and development tests alone. And so I think, showing that at those reentry speeds and slowing the vehicle down so we have a nice touchdown, 20 miles per hour, will be a great day. So all those things will be really important as we learn and go forward.
Lauren Grush with Bloomberg, in the back on the left.
Hi, Lauren Grush with Bloomberg. I'm just wondering if you got more details from the range about that Ethernet switch that gave us all trouble, and why did that crop up during what seemed like a pretty critical part of the countdown? Thanks.
Lauren, I'll tell you what I know on the switch. It was required to take some of the remote range safety systems and process that at their control center, and they had a computer problem at the range. I think I would direct that question more towards the Space Force and the range, because that is not a NASA system. I don't know, Mike, if you have anything to add on that, but it was a system required for public safety and range safety.
And I think you got it. It was basically an Ethernet switch that allowed them to tie in data from their remote sites into their central hub. Obviously they didn't expect to lose it at that time. It was at an important time, but they also recovered from it, well, and enabled us to have a launch today. So while it was unfortunate and untimely, it was also well handled and allowed us to get to a launch. So,
yeah,
kudos to them.
Yeah, I think that is a key aspect of what we saw today, was the partnership between the range and NASA Kennedy Space Center and the firing room. They raised their hand very quickly and said, "We've got an issue here, and we need to recover this before we can say that we can safely and responsibly launch." And they coordinated that with very close coordination with our launch director, Charlie, in Firing Room 1, and they gave an estimate as to when they could recover, and they were very close to it. And they worked through it very methodically, and they told us every step of the way where they were in terms of the recovery, and then that allowed our launch operations team to pick up a time very close to our intended launch window open time. I think that the real delay that, we didn't go quite at window open, but we went within the first hour, really was a byproduct of needing to send the red crew out to the pad, and we had to halt some of the loading operations, and in the interest of safety for those people. They were going into a hazardous environment, but in the interest of controlling the environment as much as you could, we had to halt that operation, which in turn kind of slowed the launch countdown and cryo loading and getting specifically the upper stage fully configured. So that, again, seeing that choreography between the Space Force on the range side and the NASA team in Firing Room 1, I think was extremely well handled today, and our hats off to the Space Force for working through that with us.
Next question. Here in front.
Hi, it's Richard Knuckles from Sky. I've got a question for Emily, actually. So Bill talks about the legacy of this program, and one thing which really has struck me talking to a lot of the engineers is the amount of women involved in the behind the scenes in the Artemis program. As you were watching the launch, there must have been an immense pride, watching Charlie doing her thing. Can you just talk about the emotions you felt and how it feels to be part of this Artemis program?
Certainly. I mean, I think my emotions are matched pretty well, not only by everybody at this table, but probably everybody who was watching it, whether they were working it or not. There's an enormous amount of pride. There's a great deal of awe. And that pride is not only in the individuals that we know and our friends who have worked so hard over the number of years, who have gotten this opportunity to contribute to this great mission, but also just in the fact that we together have gotten to this place where we're going back. I wasn't here yet the last time we went, and so it's really exciting for my generation and for the Artemis generation to get the opportunity to go to the moon and beyond. The fact that if you see the photos and imagery from the last time we were there, the diversity of the workforce, the diversity of the people who had the opportunity to contribute was maybe not quite where it is today. I think that's a point of pride. But it's in no way surprising, because I think we've all grown in that direction as well. And so when I was interviewing to become a flight director 15 years ago, I made a little bit of a faux pas saying I really wanted to be here and be a flight director when we went back to the moon, and at the time that was considered, well, you can't stay in the flight director office that long. So I'm pretty glad I stuck around.
If I could, I might just add to that. So, Charlie's obviously a beloved member of our team. She's the leader of our launch team. I had a tie earlier today. Charlie wears green on launch day. Charlie has something green. She does her nails green. And so the guys wore green ties today, just to kind of support Charlie. And if it's your first launch in a new position in the firing room, after the launch, she cuts your tie. And so I don't have a tie today because she cut my green tie. And there were a lot of green ties getting cut. It was really in support of a pretty amazing member of our team who happened to be a female. Yeah.
Thank you both. Next up, we have a question on the phones from David Curley with Discovery.
Thank you, Jackie. Mike Seraphin, can you talk a little bit more about day 26? That's your primary goal on this mission, and the heat shield. How are you feeling about it? What will you be thinking over the next 25 days?
Yeah, David, thank you for that question. As I said at the outset, we've bought down half of our priority one already through the rocket setting up those initial conditions. We do have a long 4-week mission ahead of us, and we're just going to work it day by day, and we need to work it with vigilance, and we are going to do some extraordinarily hard stuff. We're going to fly within 62 miles of the surface of the moon and use a lunar gravity assist to insert us into what is called the distant retrograde orbit, and then shake down the spacecraft while it's out there, and then on the return fly another 62 miles from the surface of the moon and use a lunar gravity assist to send us back to Earth. And we need to do it with enough precision that we hit from 250,000 miles away. That is essentially our deorbit maneuver. We need to do it with enough precision that we don't skip back out into deep space, or that we don't come in too steep and overstress the vehicle. So there's a lot ahead of us. We're just going to work it day by day. We're actually going to share some fun stuff along the way. We're going to share imagery similar to what we did earlier today of, kind of first shots of the Earth from the spacecraft. We're going to share imagery from inside the cockpit. We're going to share imagery close up of the moon. But there's a lot of hard stuff that we've got to demonstrate. And at the tail end, kind of our capstone, is going to be the high-speed reentry. We're going to come back at Mach 32, or 24,500 miles an hour. We're going to slow that spacecraft in about 20 minutes as it goes from entry interface to subsonic and parachute deployment, and then splashdown in the Pacific. When we get to that point, it will signal the arrival of our deep spacecraft and human transportation, and it will show that we've got a capability in place in combination with the rocket that we've already demonstrated that puts us on a path to accomplish the rest of the Artemis manifest in front of us. So again, we've got to take it day by day. We're going to learn stuff as we go. We've got thousands and thousands of measurements and data and engineering measurements we're going to take along the way to ensure that we understand the margins, and if they're a little bit less than we thought they were, we need to take those into account before we put humans on board. So we're going to learn a lot from this mission, and if we're lucky and we fly right down the middle, that'll be a great day. And if we learn from it, that goes back to why we're having an uncrewed test flight and why we purposefully set up an uncrewed mission before we're going to fly astronauts on the next mission.
Thanks, Mike. I think we're running up on our hour, but we do have time for a couple more questions in the room. Here in front.
Yep. John Zarella for my radar. A couple of things. How much do you lose by not flying the 40 days plus you're down to 25 days you have the mannequins on board and you're gathering all this data? For anybody who wants to answer that. And the other one was, over the course of the months, we've talked to so many folks on your team who have been with the program since the very beginning, more than 10 years. What do you have to say to long-timers out there who persevered? And as you said, Mr. Administrator, it's been a long time coming.
Go ahead.
Start. Well, I'll answer your second question. I'm a long-timer myself, and I've been with the Orion program since the very beginning. I would say to my colleagues and the people that came before me, I mean, it is obviously a historic day for us. We've dreamed about this day. We've worked very hard, persevered through a lot of challenges, not only weather and other things, changes in terms of administration and such, but it represents. I think John said it very well. The hardware is the hardware will perform. It's the people across the country, and in fact in Europe as well, working with us, spending long hours trying to make this endeavor happen. And I think it's a very proud moment. And I look at what we did today, and I reflect back upon all the late nights and the long hours we worked together with all the people that across the country, like I said, in Europe, trying to make this happen. And we should all be proud of what we've accomplished so far, but we've got a ways to go. And each day is going to be very important for us in this mission, because I think we're going to learn a lot as we go forward. So that's how I would respond to that part of the question.
Yeah, and I would agree with Howard. Perseverance is the word of the day here. This team up here and the folks that they represent have had to persevere through quite a lot over the years, and months and months and months of preparation and testing and coding and just understanding on the ground what the systems are capable of, are representative of where we got to today. But in terms of whether we lose objectives through a 26-day mission instead of a 40 to 42-day mission, it is in the margins of extra data takes. The longer time we have out there in the distant retrograde orbit allows us to get more data, but we would still accomplish all the objectives. When we baselined the Artemis I mission, it was originally just a 26-day mission. And when we started looking at the mission availability, we realized that we couldn't launch as frequently as we would like. The launch availability was roughly 1 week per month. And we asked the team, can you come up with a solution to improve our mission availability? And they came up with what we call a variable mission duration. We had a short class and a long class mission, and in the middle, you extend the stay about the moon in the distant retrograde orbit, and that actually doubled our mission availability, so we could launch roughly 2 weeks per month, or roughly half the month. And that was seen as a win in terms of mission availability, and also in terms of buying down risk. But we're flying a 26-day mission, and that is originally what we had intended. It just gives us fewer data take opportunities for a whole host of things, but we are confident that in the time frame that we're talking about flying, that we can get enough engineering data to say that we can fly crew with confidence on the next mission.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for one more question. Not hearing any in the room, so we have one more on the phones with Jim McKenna with Aerospace Tech Review.
Thanks very much. For Mike, and you may have already addressed this, but what's the next big milestone that will affirm your confidence that you're writing down the risk of the mission and the vehicle? And also, I think for Emily, when does the Orion arrive at the moon?
Okay. Emily, do you want to start?
I don't think I have that particular piece of date. Let me see if I can remember it. You go first, and I'll see if I can remember it.
I might be able to help you on both accounts. So, in terms of the next big milestone, it would be what we call the outbound trajectory correction maneuver, which would be the first firing of the propulsion system on the Orion spacecraft, the service module. We purposefully have a 30-second firing of the service module engine, and that happens just under 8 hours into the mission, so 7 hours, 47 minutes into the mission. And then, I'm sorry, Jim, I lost the... When do we arrive at the distant retrograde orbit? I've got it here. Give me just a second.
Yeah, it's roughly a week. Yeah. And then we spend about a week in the orbit, and then we spend about a week coming home.
There's a reason I write this stuff down, Jim. Hang on just a second. We actually issue memos on this while I'm stalling for time, just to keep everybody synchronized. I will find it, Jim, here. Hang on just a second. All right, so is on the 21st. It's 7:44 Eastern time in the morning. So that is the first of the 2 maneuver sequence that does that lunar flyby in the slingshot 62 miles from the surface of the moon. We do that behind the moon, by the way, so we're not going to see it until after the maneuver is complete. So we're kind of blind, and we'll when we get acquisition of signal on the spacecraft afterward, we'll know that the maneuver was successful. And then the second of the maneuvers for the distant retrograde insertion is on the 25th. So I guess that's the day after Thanksgiving at 4:52 p.m. So I hope that answers your question.
All right, thank you all so much. That's all the time we have this morning. But the Artemis I mission is just beginning. In just a few hours, we'll have live TV coverage and commentary of Orion's first outbound trajectory burn that Mike just mentioned. So stay tuned at nasa.gov/live and go Artemis.
Sound suppressor water now flowing under the ML. And here we go.
10.
Hydrogen burn-off igniters initiated. 7, 6, 5. 4-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. Boosters in ignition. And liftoff of Artemis I. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
All 4 RS-25 engines on the core stage and 2 solid rocket boosters now propelling the vehicle at 128 miles per hour. Very good.
qu'est-ce que ça ferait clair en dehors de... Merci.
I don't know yet. It depends what he will say.
wiecie, jak to coś było, to możecie liczyć, że ja się będę starała. Znaczy na to na pewno nie, no bo będę jeszcze śmierć, ale po 13 bo po tym, jakbyście na przykład go słuchali, możecie wyciąć pomysł, bo to mamy jeszcze Szatkowskiego już tutaj po konferencji z sędziami, wiesz, jak został ten pomysł. To takiej już wstępnej informacji. No, oczywiście, oczywiście. Dobra, oczywiście, no to wiesz, to będziemy w kontakcie. Pa, pa. Jasne, dobra, dobra, pa, pa.
Quand il arrive, vous êtes ça c'est le lunch.
Ja, ik ga naar beneden.
Oh ja, drink dat van komen, nu dan.
Nee, nee, ja, ja.
Please, ready.
Ja, ja, dan ga ik naar beneden, zo je komt.
No worries.
Het is gewoon omdat... Deze keer staat dat die weken daar niet. Het is altijd een beeld voor ons als ze naar voren gaat. We willen nu even in het midden staan om een zekere symmetrie te hebben. Als dat die weken er gestaan, dan opzij en dan... Misschien wat anders.
Good afternoon. We have just finished a meeting of the North Atlantic Council. We addressed yesterday's explosion in the east of Poland on the border with Ukraine. Our top military commander, General Cavoli, briefed allies, and the Polish ambassador updated us on the incident and the ongoing investigation. Yesterday's explosion took place as Russia launched a massive wave of rocket attacks across Ukraine. Since the start of Russia's illegal war in Ukraine, NATO has increased vigilance across our eastern flank, and we are monitoring the situation on a continuous basis. An investigation into this incident is ongoing, and we need to await its outcome. But we have no indication that this was the result of a deliberate attack. And we have no indication that Russia is preparing offensive military actions against NATO. Our preliminary analysis suggests that the incident was likely caused by a Ukrainian air defense missile fired to defend Ukrainian territory against Russian cruise missile attacks. But let me be clear, this is not Ukraine's fault. Russia bears ultimate responsibility as it continues its illegal war against Ukraine. In the meeting today, NATO allies offered their deepest condolences on the tragic loss of life. They expressed their strong solidarity with our valued ally Poland and made clear that we will continue to support Ukraine in its right to self-defense. Russia must stop this senseless war. Last night I spoke with the Polish President Andrzej Duda and with US President Joe Biden. We agreed that we need to stay vigilant, calm, and closely coordinated. We will continue to consult and monitor the situation very closely. NATO stands united, and we will always do what is necessary to protect and defend all allies. And with that, I'm ready to take your questions.
We start with Polish radio, lady in grey at the back.
Thank you, Anna. Beata Połęcka, Polish Radio, Public Broadcaster, Polskie Radio. Secretary General, what could be the outcome in concrete terms of today's meeting? Can we expect enhancing Europe's air defense, especially in the countries bordering Ukraine, because as the war continues, there will be Russian rockets striking Ukrainian cities, and there is a risk that such situation can happen again. Thank you very much.
So in the meeting today, NATO allies expressed their strong support, solidarity with our ally Poland. They also expressed their deepest condolences for the tragic loss of life. And NATO has significantly increased its presence in the eastern part of the alliance, in particular since the invasion of Ukraine in February, with more troops on land, ground troops, but also with significant, substantial air and naval power. And this has, of course, both increased our air defense capabilities, but also our capabilities to monitor, to have full picture of what's going on the border between NATO allies like Poland and Ukraine. And we are constantly assessing what more we need to do. We also have made important decisions at our summit in Madrid to further strengthen our presence in the eastern part of the alliance.
BBC.
Thank you, Jessica Parker from BBC News. I just wanted to ask, given the incident that happened last night, do you think this was perhaps the most tense moment for NATO in this conflict so far? Thank you.
I'm always careful to rank different incidents and situations. It demonstrates that the war in Ukraine, which is President Putin's responsibility, continues to create dangerous situations. At the same time, we have to remember that this happened at the same time as Russia launched a wave of new indiscriminate missile and air attacks on Ukrainian cities, attacking critical civilian infrastructure, hitting civilian targets. Then it's nothing strange. Then, of course, that is in itself a very dangerous situation. And then we then also see that there may be also consequences on NATO territory as a consequence of the war that Russia wages against Ukraine.
We'll go to the Ukrainian news agency in the middle.
Thank you for the floor. Dmytro Shkurko, National News Agency of Ukraine. I just want to mention that Ukrainians do understand the pain of the Polish people and have a greatest sympathy with them. My question is how that incident will be reflected on the assistance that allies provided for Ukraine in air defense. Where will be some kind of new systems to cover the Ukrainian sky? Thanks.
There will be a meeting today in the contact group for Ukraine to coordinate the support NATO allies and partners and others are providing to Ukraine. And main focus of our efforts over the last months has been on air defense, especially since Russia started to launch these indiscriminate attacks on Ukrainian cities a few weeks ago. And I welcome that more and more allies and partners are providing advanced air defense systems to Ukraine. NASAMS, Hawk batteries from Spain and others. I also know that Sweden has made new announcements of additional support, also with air defenses to Ukraine. So we are mobilizing additional support, especially when it comes to different types of air defenses. NATO is also providing counter-drone systems. We need many different systems to protect against cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, but also drones. And we need a layered defense of Ukraine. That's exactly what the allies are providing in different ways.
Bloomberg.
Just here from Bloomberg. Does this incident, will this spur more air defense for allies on the eastern border? I know you said there has been a step up since the beginning of the war, but does more need to be done? Thank you.
We are constantly assessing our presence in the eastern part of the alliance. We have significantly increased our presence on land, at sea, and in the air, and that has significantly increased our air defense capabilities, especially in the eastern part of the alliance. At the same time, we have no indication that this incident was a result of a deliberate attack on NATO territory. And we have no indications that Russia is planning offensive military actions against NATO allies. So I think this demonstrates the dangers connected to the ongoing war in Ukraine, but it hasn't changed our fundamental assessment of the threat against NATO allies. It shows the importance of monitoring, of being vigilant, of the presence, and we made decisions for long-term adaptation of NATO's deterrence and defense at the summit in Madrid in June, and that includes partly more presence in the east, partly more pre-positioned equipment, in particular in the eastern part of the alliance, and partly earmarked forces so we can quickly scale up the battle groups we have in the eastern part of the alliance. And of course, all of this will also further strengthen our air defense capabilities. Then air defense is partly land-based, but air defense is also very often air-based, also aircraft, and a naval based on our ships. And of course, air forces and naval forces is something we very quickly can move in. SACEUR has, our Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, has already authorities to move in additional forces, including air and naval forces, to augment our air defenses quickly if needed.
Thanks a lot, Thomas Gutschka, Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung. Secretary General, a few factual questions, if I may. First of all, the debris found near the border of Poland and Ukraine, is this debris only from an Ukrainian rocket launched to intercept a Russian missile, or is there also debris of a Russian missile? Secondly, what was the likely trajectory of the Russian missile that was meant to intercept by Ukraine? And thirdly, did NATO forces present at the eastern flank activate their air defense systems yesterday because they saw an incoming, potentially incoming missile? Thank you.
So we have air defense systems in place that are active 24/7 all the time. We have AWACS planes, we have aircraft, we have land-based systems, and we have naval-based systems. So we have air defenses which operates constantly throughout the alliance. Then, of course, we have a significant focus, and we have, in particular, increased our presence in the eastern part of the alliance, and this also includes Poland. Then, on the details of the findings and the ongoing investigation, it will not be right if I go into those details, but as I said, our preliminary findings are that this is likely caused by a Ukrainian air defense missile, and we have no indication that it was any deliberate attack on NATO territory.
Thank you very much. Just a brief question. Has there been any communication between NATO and the Russian authorities, even on a technical level, over the past 24 hours regarding Russian activity close to NATO's borders? Thank you.
We have military lines of communications. We're able to communicate with Russia in different ways as NATO and as allies, but I cannot go into the details of exactly what kind of contact have been over the last 24 hours.
Hi, thank you. Does the fact that the Polish government, even after hours of